Good morning. Sorry for the sun. So this morning I'm getting into pride at calibration level 175 hertz. So I'll just start with the introduction. And this is the last level of the lower level energies. So people feel more positive as they reach this level, and the rise in self-esteem is the balm to all pain experienced at the lower levels of consciousness. So pride is far enough removed from shame, guilt, or fear that to rise out of despair is an enormous jump. Pride, as such, generally has a good reputation and is socially encouraged. Yet, as we see from the map of the scale of consciousness, it is sufficiently negative to remain below the critical level of 200, which we're going to get into hopefully tomorrow. Pride feels good only in contrast to the lower levels. Because pride goeth before a fall, as it says in the Bible, it is defensive and vulnerable as it is dependent upon external conditions, without which it can suddenly revert to a lower level. The inflated ego is vulnerable to attack. Pride remains weak because it can be knocked off its pedestal into shame, which is the threat that fires the fear of loss of pride. Pride is divisive and gives rise to factionalism, resulting in costly consequences. Man has habitually died for pride, for which armies still regularly slaughter each other. Religious wars, political terrorism, and zealotry in the ghastly history of the Middle East and Central Europe are all the price of pride and hatred which all society pays. The downside of pride is arrogance and denial. These characteristics block growth. In pride, recovery from addictions is impossible because emotional problems or character defects are denied. The whole problem of denial is that of pride. Thus, pride is a very sizable block to the acquisition of real power, which displaces pride with true stature and prestige. And I mean, like I said, there's a lot. I'm going to dig deeper into these levels as I come to understand them, probably later on. So I'll just read just a few things that stuck out to me. So pride is self-admiration, which implies that others, by comparison, are inferior or have less worth, rank, or value. The transparency of this veneer is quickly apprehended by more mature people who consider it to be an embarrassment and a social detrimental attribute. Yeah, I always find pride repulsive when the attitude shows on people. So egoistic pride as specialness triggers resentment in others and in society in general. In contrast, the truly successful people are accepted because mature success is accompanied by humility and gratitude rather than an air of superiority. And it gets into narcissism and the hostility of narcissism. And how the internet is used. Because the narcissistic ego is not aligned with an integrous truth, its forms of expression become strident and fallacious, and therefore calibrate extremely low. Yeah. Because of the pervasiveness of pride as an expression of the human ego, some forms of pride are accorded social acceptance or even approval and accepted as normal. The most prominent is the status of personal opinion in its multiple expressions as, quote, free speech. And I mean, it's full blown today, like I talked about yesterday. Just people posting, all kinds of different people posting their opinions on TikTok and on X and YouTube. Like, it's insane. I mean, it's so opinion is often rationalized by rhetoric in order to justify a personality, such as is represented by skepticism, which denounces the nonlinear domain because it is unable to comprehend it. An opinion is an idea that has acquired the glamour of self-importance and is therefore more attractive than just reason, logic, or facts. So yeah. And like I shared before, it's all fueled by ego. The intrinsic source of pride is the narcissistic energy of the ego by which it self-propagates via images and symbols through a circuitous, self-reinforcing pattern. Yeah, and it goes on. Pride is fragile, and therefore its defenses are often rigid and extreme to the point of paranoia. That which is inflated is subject to deflation, which quickly triggers shame. Thus, humility is misrepresented by the ego as being the equivalent of humiliation, whereas in reality, humility is the strongest safeguard against humiliation or vulnerability. So yeah, I mean, that's a foretaste of pride for you. And like it says, like I talked about before, about happiness. And I always knew that happiness is really one of the goals of life. But the capacity for happiness is not dependent on possessions. Once one's basic physical needs are met, rates of happiness are correlated clearly with calibrated levels of consciousness, according to the map of consciousness. The less the wants prevail, the greater the experience of freedom. As one's level of consciousness advances, possessions can become an encumbrance, actually. So, that's it for today. So, tomorrow we're going to rise out of the muck of ego and start transcending. So, see you tomorrow.